biggest fight in Bellator history, and I will stand by this 100%. Is it probably one of the biggest featherweight fights in history as well? And people are going to just go ahead and knock on me on this, but we just sat down with Shab as well. And we were actually talking about some of the best fights. Let's just talk real quick about some of the best. We
were pointing him out because he was like, "No, I don't think so." And I was like, "Oh, really? Well, let me point out some about it."
Right, so let's talk Jose. You talk Jose Aldo and Conor McGregor would probably be number one. Right?
That was a huge one.
That was a huge one. Definitely a huge one. Given the everything that was going on, plus then the way it was finished, 13 seconds. Exactly. So that fight. Then I would say number 2, probably Max Holloway and Brian Ortega.
Yeah.
I would say that was probably number 2.
Yeah, fantastic.
If you get beyond that, I don't really know. Volkanovski and Max.
Volkanovski and Max 2.
In 2, right?
Yeah.
2. So great. So those 3 fights I would put in the top 3 somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that this is going to be the greatest.
You don't know.
We don't know yet.
Could be the worst.
Not, yeah. And I would also maybe even put, what was the second one? I think it was second, Chad Mendes and Jose Aldo. Well, the second one was a great fight. The first one was, remember, he got knocked out, I think, in the first one. The second one was a good fight.
The Chad Mendes, Jose Aldo was the second one when he got hit by the knee.
I thought that was the first one.
Oh, that was the first one.
That was the first one.
Exactly, yeah.
All right.
That was great, yeah. Very nice.
Observe this.
Both of his fights against, Aldo were actually good, though.
Yeah, they were.
They were good matches. But you can go farther back and you can take a look at some of the matchups that were there. Think of, Mike Brown. No one thinks of Mike Brown as a fighter, okay? He's a great coach at ATT.
Amazing
phenomenal
coach.
Guy.
One of the best in the business.
His fight against Uriah Faber the first time, just a phenomenal job of a guy taking over a big-name guy. He just overcame everything that was there that was a problem and just kept going. And just
is that where Uriah tried to hit that back elbow and he knocked him out? That Mike Brown
No, that was the second one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, was that the first one?
I thought it was the first one.
That was the first one.
Okay,
that was the one. That was the one from Florida. That was the same one that Chael had the fight against
Paulo
Filo the second time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the first time he won it. That was in Florida. And then he came back and he won the second time when Uriah broke both hands fighting him. So, but, both of those were good fights. But then you can go even farther back. There was, there's all kinds of those where you take a look at the Mark Hominick versus Jose Aldo.
Oh, that was a good fight.
Great fight. Aldo did phenomenal in the first couple of rounds.
First 3 rounds.
In fourth round was kind of losing. And fifth round, Mark Hominick comes on and hurts him and puts him on his back. And there's been some great fights. But you take a look, this one, just on the face value, if they perform the way they can both perform, this can be one of those fights.
Yeah. I want to know, though, is like, where do you put them in terms of... First off, let me go back to what you were just talking about. I think that those are the top 3, the 3 fights that I said.
That we talked about.
And I think this is probably in that 4. It's in that mix of number 3. But it really depends.
But those fights happened, so you had an idea. But you're talking about the build up to them.
I'm not talking about the build up. I'm talking about the actual hey, these fights. When it comes to, if I'm going to say what are the best 145-pound fights we could put together, this would be one of them.
Yeah,
because you have someone who has been the dog, who's been the champion for the longest time, and you've got this young up and comer who has never been defeated, and who has been noted of saying to him, like, hey, I'm coming for you. That's TikTok. And that's how long ago. That was 4 or 5 years ago. That's how long ago Patricio's been champion. So there's a lot to be said in terms of the champion hasn't faltered in 4 or 5 years, and this young stud hasn't faltered either in 4 or 5 years. It's, in terms of name value across the sport, look, when people talk about Bellator, they talk about Douglas Lima, they talk about MVP, they talk about Patricio, and they talk about AJ McKee. I mean, when I'm going through the names of people that come off when the media is going to cover this event or cover Bellator at all, they're talking about one of those guys.
Usually.
I mean, it went a little while for Ryan Bader. Then when he lost to Nemkov, I kind of petered out a little bit. And then now, and then obviously now with AJ, Anthony Johnson, and Yoel Romero, but Yoel hasn't made his debut yet. Anthony Johnson is in the semifinals against Nemkov, so AJ will be a name for sure that they bring up. Nemkov will be a name they for sure bring up, but neither one of them, even with AJ's stardom in previous UFCs and all this other stuff, they still are not. I don't think in terms of when it comes to Bellator, AJ McKee and Patricio are the 2 biggest names that they talk about.
Yeah,
in Bellator.
I would agree with you. I just look at it this way. If you took the 145-pound division as a whole, take away the promotions, and you tried to intertwine them and mix them, it's going to be where AJ and Patricio both will end up in the top 5. Now, I'm not saying that Volkanovski wouldn't be number 1, we'll say, since, where he's at, and Max Holloway wouldn't be there, and Brian Ortega wouldn't be there. But you're going to be hard-pressed to put other people above Patricio. Mm-hmm. And you're going to be hard-pressed to put someone in there besides AJ. So you're talking about 2 guys that are definitely within the top, definitely in the top 10, probably top 5 in the world at featherweight facing off. One of them with an undefeated record. And that says a whole lot. That undefeated record, people you look at, and a lot of times you can look at it and say, yeah, but take a look. There's a lot of AJ has fought a lot of good people. And this tournament has proved something about who he is as a fighter. When you look and you go, he went through, a guy that was the World Series of Fighting champion in Georgi Karhanian in 8 seconds. And I mean, starched him.
Yeah.
All right. Then he goes through Derek Campos. He blows out his knee in the first round. He actually blows his wad because he tries to put on another spectacular performance and finds that, you just can't get rid of tough people right away, but guts it out and gets a beautiful submission victory, gets the armbar off of the triangle. And so two fights, 2 stoppages, 2 wins, 2 finishes, and then his third one against Darian Caldwell, an ex-champion at the bantamweight level, a guy who stepped up, was a 149-pound NC2A champion in wrestling from North Carolina State, and then puts on a submission that a whole lot of people had never seen before. The neck crank that he used, we call it now the McKee even though it's not a teen, but that was done at just 1 minute and 1 minute 11 seconds of the first round. All right. 3 fights, 3 finishes.
Yep.
All coming into this. And you just look and you go, he's becoming more dangerous in every area. His striking is better. He's fast. He's long. And coming into this fight, you look at him, just if you look at, statistically their statures, he's huge compared to Pitbull. We're talking about a 74-inch reach compared to probably a 66.
Yeah.
That's big. And then you're talking speed difference and everything. This kid has it all. He's been part of the fight game throughout his entire life because of his dad. He has matured now. He understands what it takes to be one of the guys in the top level of this sport. And he's putting in all the hard work. He's putting in the effort. And he has called this for this fight for a long time. This is what he wanted. Now's your opportunity. You're either going to take this and grab it and run with it, or you're going to let it pass you by. Which one's it going to be? Yeah,
if I put, like you were saying, if you put the top 5 featherweights in the world, I'd have to include Patricio and AJ McKee in there. And look, and what people need to understand is that it has nothing to do with whether, even if you put them at 4 and 5, go ahead and do that. But when you're talking about putting up matchups, you are splitting hairs when it comes down to who matches up well with who.
Sure.
Okay, so we talked about this on Food Truck Diaries today, is that I put Volk, I put Patricio over Volk. But that doesn't mean that Patricio is going to beat Max or beat Brian Ortega.
That's right.
But I put AJ McKee right there with Brian Ortega and with Max Holloway. Now, I also think that Brian Ortega, for all of them, is probably the most dangerous one because of his grappling.
I think he's the most dangerous for all
of them.
Yeah,
if you're intermixing them, that's what we were talking about. He's the one that poses the most threat if you're to match him up against every single one of them, because he's phenomenal jiu-jitsu.
And you could also look at him all probably the least formidable as far as physically imposing of all of them.
That's very true. That's very true.
Yeah.
So when it comes down, you don't look at him like, oh man, that's the guy. Look how athletic he looks. Look how explosive he is. No, he's just super talented, and he uses all the tools that he has to his benefit. I mean, his jiu-jitsu is fucking phenomenal. His takedown defense and his wrestling is pretty damn good as well. And he can take a shot, as we saw in the Max Holloway fight. And now that he's gotten better with his stand-up, he's a full range fighter now. Yeah. So I think when you look at him versus Volkanovski, I'm sitting here going, I don't see how Volk wins this fight. But then again, I counted Volk out both times against Max Holloway, and look where it got me. So, but in terms of with these two, with Patricio and with AJ, I think it really is going to come down to Patricio's going to take the center of the cage, and he's going to wait for AJ to make a mistake. And if he can do that, and he's able to land a couple clean shots, I think he might be able to get AJ out of there. But AJ, with the speed, the reach, and the athleticism to get in and out, he can afford to falter a slightly here and there against Patricio, but he's got to be very careful because of the power of Patricio. So when you're talking, it really comes down to who makes the biggest mistake and who can capitalize on it at that moment.
That really what it comes down to, in the way I look at the fight, is AJ is the guy. We talk faster. He's a better athlete. And that's just
let's just
but Patricio is the guy that has learned how to fight.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean AJ doesn't know how to fight, but it means that Patricio has learned all of the things that good fighters understand of. I don't have to win every second. I don't have to hit somebody back because they hit me. I just have to wait for my opportunity to do what I do. And if there's one thing that I look at that I think is an advantage for Patricio in this matchup is AJ takes chances at times. He's young, he's brash, he knows he's athletic, he knows he's explosive, he knows I can get myself out of anything. Yeah. And he takes a chance, and if he takes that kind of chance that puts him in a bad spot against Patricio is going to make him pay. And that's what a smart fighter does.
Is this a Canelo Mayweather situation?
It might be.
But I feel like the only thing with Canelo Mayweather jumped on Canelo when he was still really young.
Yes.
Whereas right now, I think AJ McKee has matured. I think if he would have jumped on him in the beginning of the tournament, we'd have been looking at a different fighter.
It might have been a little different there, but if you go back a couple of years, and I can tell you the changing point, when AJ McKee fought Brian Moore in Ireland, he was the main event. I think it was the first time he was the main event. That was the difference maker fight in AJ McKee's career. That's the one that told him, I cannot just be the better athlete. I cannot get away without doing the things that I need to do in the gym and come in here and perform and win against people that are good. This is a guy that I actually should have put away easily. And he took me to the third round. He hurt me. He cut me. He caused me problems. I've just learned a lesson that I will never forget. And he has changed as a fighter from that point. And that's been that was the key turning point in his career. Yes, he was undefeated, but he was still young and immature as far as fighting. That was the fight that I go, there's your difference maker. That fight taught him a lesson, one that he learned and one that has changed him as a fighter.
Yeah.
100% agree. Okay.